It wasn't an airplane. It was not an airplane. It was down off the road.
You are listening to Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast with your host, Ash Ellis.
Hello friends, welcome back to Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast with me, Ash Ellis. Fresh off a weekend at the Paracon conference in Northwich, ran by the guys from Bib Paranormal and Powerstream. Powerstream has just launched. You go to powerstream.co.uk. It's a one-stop place for all different types of paranormal shows, videos, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. And it's somebody we're going to be working with quite a lot, with some exciting projects coming up. It costs just £1 a month to sign up, and that gives you access to all the content on there, so it's well worth it. Cheap price, and the guys running it are good guys, so yeah, make sure you get onto powerstream.co.uk. So this week, hope you're all doing very well. I'm going to be a bit of a special week. I'm going to do 2 episodes, obviously this one and one in a couple of days. I'm going to be talking all about alien abductions, or potential alien abduction cases. I've got 9 or 10 that I want to talk about, so that's why I split it into 2, just to not so it's not all too much information in one go. You can just sit back and enjoy 4 or 5 accounts in each episode. Some of them you will have heard of before. I'm going to talk just about a couple of the well-known ones, just for, tick those boxes. There'll be a couple that you may have heard of but maybe not know too much about, and hopefully there will be 3 or 4 at least that you might have never heard of before. Could be brand new abduction accounts that you don't know about, so hopefully we'll have some of that for you. Let me know if you have or not. Love to know your feedback on these accounts, and some of them are very, very strange and all certainly interesting. So the first account I'm going to talk about is back from 1983, and this is the Burtoo abduction. It was a calm summer evening on the 12th of August 1983. A gentleman named Alfred Burtoo was strolling along the banks of the Basingstoke Canal in Aldershot, accompanied by his trusty dog Tiny. They were out for a night of fishing, a beloved routine under the starlit sky. Nearby, the army barracks loomed, and as Alfred set up his gear, he distinctly remembered hearing the barracks clock strike 1 a.m. Moments later, as Alfred poured himself a cup of tea from his flask, something unusual caught his eye. A strange light approaching him, coming closer and closer until it stopped just 300 feet away, partially hidden by a line of trees. Its lights, however, glowed through the branches, impossible to ignore. Tiny, sensing something was off, began to growl, his eyes fixed on the mysterious lights. Alfred, a spiry 77-year-old, stood up for a better view, and that's when he saw them. 2 beings moving towards him, stopping only 5 feet away and simply staring. Alfred later described these beings in vivid detail. Each was about 4 feet tall, dressed head to toe in tight green overalls, their heads covered by matching green helmets with blacked out visors. And yet, Alfred wasn't afraid. More curious than anything else. Perhaps it was his military background kicking in, keeping him cool under pressure. One of the beings then gestured for Alfred to follow, leading him towards the craft that Alfred could now see clearly beyond the trees. With Tiny by his side, and another being close behind, Alfred followed across a small footbridge. There it stood, a massive 40-foot shining metallic craft balanced on 2 ski-like legs. A set of steps led up to a porthole, and once again, Alfred was beckoned to enter. Still just curious and not feeling any fear, he climbed aboard. Inside, Alfred found himself in an octagonal room. The air was warm, but with a horrid, almost decaying smell. He took in every detail, like a soldier surveying a new terrain. The walls were black with an unfinished metallic look. No bolts, no seams, just smooth, endless surfaces. The beings moved with a strange stiffness, almost robotic, though their gait wasn't too different from a human's. Suddenly, in the centre of the room, a large shaft appeared, and with it, two more beings identical to the first. Then he heard it. A voice, speaking clearly, instructing him to stand under the amber light. He did as he was told, stepping into the glow. A series of questions followed, one of which was about his age. After he answered, he was asked to spin slowly under the light. Moments later, the voice returned, almost indifferent. "You're too old to help us." And just like that, Alfred was escorted out, back down the steps, and across the footbridge to where he had left his fishing gear. As he stood there, watching the craft suddenly burst into a brilliant light, and shot off at a speed that no human-made machine could match. He glanced at his watch. More than an hour had passed since he first saw that light. Morning came, and Alfred was still trying to make sense of it all. Around 10 a.m, two mounted Ministry of Defence policemen rode along the canal bank, and Alfred couldn't help but mention the strange lights he'd seen. One of the officers nodded almost nonchalantly. "Yes, I suspect you did see that UFO. Probably checking on our military installations." Imagine Alfred's surprise. He wasn't alone in his experience. He rushed home, eager to tell his wife about the incredible adventure he had had. A few months later, still seeking answers, Alfred contacted the local newspaper to see if there were other witnesses. His story gained traction, even getting picked up by journalist Timothy Good, who featured it in his book Above Top Secret, stating that he fully believed Alfred's account. Interestingly, after that night, security around the MOD base intensified. It was as if a silent alarm had been triggered. Guards dressed all in black, fully armed, patrolling the area. New signs went up, declaring the surrounding land off limits. It was clear that something had changed. Years later, in 2006, an investigator returned to the scene and took a photo of a peculiar metallic object. Something invisible to the naked eye. What could it have been? Proof of Alfred's story? Was it something left behind? Sadly, Alfred Burtoo passed away in 1986, but until his last day he stood by his story. Despite the skeptics, despite the rumours, he knew what he had experienced. Even now, almost every year on the anniversary of his death, the local paper runs an article about the incident, strangely focused on debunking it, dismissing the story as a hoax. So what do you think? Was he just an old man with a wild imagination? Or did he truly encounter something not of this world? Heading abroad now, and this is 1965 Buenos Aires in Argentina. The night air is calm, and an 18-year-old named Orlando Jorge Ferrari is out fishing alone on the banks of the Rio de la Plata. Now, the area is known to be frequented by homeless people, and Orlando, smart guy, usually carried packs of cigarettes to hand out to keep them from bothering him. Just your typical night of fishing, right? Or so it seemed. It's around 11:30 PM when Orlando suddenly gets that feeling, that sensation when someone's watching you. He turns around, expecting to see one of the regulars from the area. Instead, he comes face to face with something else. Towering over him, at over 2 meters tall, is a humanoid figure unlike anything he's seen before. This being is dressed head to toe in a yellow one-piece suit, complete with a hood, and sparks, actual sparks, are flickering off the fabric. Imagine that, yellow suit, sparks flying, something definitely otherworldly about this. The being's features were striking: short, white blonde hair, skin as pale as moonlight, and eyes that glowed with an amber hue. And then, In a voice Orlando didn't hear with his ears, but rather inside his head, the being spoke. "Do not be afraid. Come with me. We have a long journey ahead." As much as Orlando might have wanted to resist, he simply couldn't. Something compelled him to obey every command. The being then pulls out a small gadget, like a makeup compact, but far stranger. Each time it moved, Orlando felt a wave of nausea wash over him, his knees weakening. The gadget emitted a bright light, and suddenly, Orlando noticed something emerging from under the water. A massive craft, about 70 feet wide, shaped like an inverted soup bowl. A narrow metal walkway extended from the craft, and before he knew it, Orlando was being led on board. Once inside, Orlando found himself in a small room bathed in luminous light, though there seemed to be no clear source of it. The walls were smooth and domed, blended into one another without any edges. It was here that he saw another surprise. A young girl. She looked just as confused as Orlando. Introducing herself as Elena, she explained she was only 11 years old and had been taken from her home in St. Louis, Argentina. As they spoke, the door opened and another being entered. This one was a tall, athletic-looking female, dressed in a similar yellow suit. She gestured for Elena to follow her, leaving Orlando alone with yet another being who gave him a strange command. "Take off your clothes," the being instructed telepathically. Orlando hesitated but obeyed, stripping to his underwear, only to be told that he needed to be completely naked as his clothes were contaminated. The being tossed his clothes into a bin-like container which filled with green smoke. Just like that, his belongings were gone. Then Orlando was handed a small piece of fabric, barely 30 centimeters long, and told to put it on. He thought it was impossible, but the fabric somehow expanded to fit him perfectly, like magic. He said it felt like wearing nothing at all. Elena soon returned, also wearing a similar outfit. The two were informed that their journey would take them underwater from Buenos Aires to the coast of Uruguay and from there out to Africa before launching into space. This was apparently to avoid hostile detection. And as strange as all this sounded, neither Elena nor Orlando felt that they could question it. Orlando learned more disturbing, mind-bending information. The beings told him that genetic experimentation had been going on for thousands of years and that Earth was essentially a zoo for extraterrestrial life, with human genetics originating from beyond the stars. Orlando and Elena were then led to the bridge of the ship, a space filled with 10 more beings, all working with strange mechanical instruments. Through massive windows, Orlando could see Earth getting smaller, the moon floating by, and even the sun, oddly appearing black, perhaps filtered through some alien technology. And still, he felt no movement, as if the craft was gliding effortlessly through the void. Before long, they were told that they'd be heading back to Earth. Orlando watched as the planet grew closer at an impossible speed, terror seizing him at the thought of crashing. But then, the voice reassured him, "Do not be concerned. When we are near, we shall form a field with the Earth and will not collide with it." And just like that, they found themselves above the Caribbean Sea. Suddenly, Orlando realised they were now aboard a smaller ship that had docked within an enormous craft, a maintenance station, several acres in size and shaped like an igloo. The beings led them through a long tunnel to a room with small, cot-like beds. They were given a thick, honey-like drink and a tablet, instructed telepathically to consume them, and assured they would feel sleepy but safe. Once they lay down on the cots, strange instruments hovered above them, and Orlando drifted off. When he woke up, he had no idea how much time had passed. He was back in his original clothes, now free of whatever contamination they had claimed. and one of the beings informed him that he had been adjusted. He would now know when they were thinking of him because he'd feel a buzzing or ringing in his ears. And then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. Orlando found himself back on the shore where he'd been fishing, the sun now rising over the water. Hours had passed, and yet every detail was vivid in his mind, clear as day. There was one image in particular that had been burned into his memory, a triangle inside a circle. He didn't know what it meant or why it was there, but it stayed with him, a constant reminder of the unimaginable journey he had taken. And as for the young girl Elena, he never saw her again, and never learned what happened to her after that day. Orlando could recall every detail of the ship, its 2 floors, the strange motor room operated by beings in blue suits, the command bridge, and an explanation that the ship moved using a combination of cosmic, solar, and magnetic forces. He even remembered the being's warning, a chilling one, that if Earth ever jeopardized interstellar harmony, they would not hesitate to use their special energy against us. To this day, Orlando had never changed a single part of his story. He never found out what happened to Elena, nor did he ever decipher the mysterious symbol, the triangle inside a circle. So what does it all mean? Was Orlando's experience real, a dream, or something beyond our understanding? One thing's for sure, if it was real, we're not just being watched, maybe we're part of something far bigger than we could ever imagine. It's 1961. Betty and Barney Hill are a typical American couple living in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in the USA. Betty is a social worker and Barney works at the post office. They're well respected in their community, active churchgoers, and Barney even serves on the United States Commission for Civil Rights. Life is simple, normal, and they've just come back from a lovely vacation to Niagara Falls. But on their way home, something happens that will change their lives forever. This is the story of Betty and Barney Hill, the first widely reported case of alien abduction. It all started on the night of September 19th, 1961, as the couple were driving along US Route 3. Betty notices something peculiar in the sky. It looks like a star, but it's moving in ways that stars don't. Zigzagging, darting. It's enough to make you stop and look twice. Intrigued, they pull over, partly to let their dog have a quick walk, but mostly to have a better look at this star. Barney is skeptical. He thinks it's probably just an airplane, but as they watch it move in strange, erratic patterns, they both start to feel uneasy. And when it seemed to be getting closer, they did what most people would do. They quickly jumped back in the car and took off. Things only got stranger from there. Shortly before midnight, and as they drove down a secluded stretch of road, that same craft appeared again. Only this time, it was a lot closer. Suddenly, it descended right in front of them, hovering just 30 feet above the car. Bright light flooded the area, illuminating the road and their vehicle. Barney brought the car to a screeching halt, stunned at what he was seeing. He stepped out of the car, binoculars in hand, to get a better look. What he saw left him frozen. Through the craft's windows, Barney could see 10 humanoid figures staring right at him. They were dressed in shiny black uniforms, complete with matching hats. Then, without warning, Barney received a message, telepathically. It wasn't a voice he heard, but a feeling, a command. Stay where you are and keep looking at us. Panic washed over him. Barney sprinted back to the car, yelling at Betty to keep an eye on the craft as he slammed on the gas. He knew it. He felt it deep in his bones. They're going to capture us. Suddenly, a strange humming sound filled the car, rhythmic and pulsing, vibrating through their bodies. It was as if they were slipping into some altered state of consciousness. Then, another wave of humming. And just like that, they found themselves 35 miles further down the road. No idea how they got there, no memory of what had just happened. When they finally arrived home, it was dawn. They felt disoriented, with strange sensations they couldn't explain. The watches had stopped working, never to tick again. They both had an overwhelming urge to shower, feeling as though they needed to decontaminate. Barney noticed that his shoes were scuffed, as if he'd been dragged. Betty's dress was torn along the lining and zipper, and oddly, it had a strange pink powder on it, powder that blew away when she hung the dress outside. They couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened. They tried to piece together a timeline, recording everything they could remember. They also noticed several strange circular markings on the car. When they held a compass near these spots, the needle would spin wildly, but behave normally when moved away. It was like their car had been marked by something unearthly. Still grappling with what to do, they decided to report the incident, but they were afraid of sounding ridiculous, so Betty made a carefully edited call to Peace Air Force Base, leaving out the strangest details. The official report concluded there was insufficient data, but the stories passed along to Project Blue Book, the US government's UFO investigation program. And then, 10 days after that fateful night, Betty started having vivid dreams. For 5 nights in a row, the dreams haunted her. In them, she saw herself and Barney being led into the woods by 2 small beings dressed in blue-black uniforms. Barney looked like he was sleepwalking as they were guided up a ramp into a disc-shaped craft. Once inside, they were separated. Betty was taken into an examination room by a being she later called the Examiner. He was kind, speaking to her in English, although another being in the room spoke in a language she couldn't understand. Betty named him the Leader. The Examiner performed a series of tests, taking skin samples, clipping her hair and nails, and even inserting a painful needle into her navel. But as soon as Betty cried out, the Leader waved his hand, and just like that, the pain vanished. Betty was shown a book filled with strange symbols, and even given a glimpse of a star map, showing where the beings had come from. But later, the book was taken away, as if the crew had changed their minds about letting her keep it. Was this a genuine recollection, or just a dream? Betty wasn't sure, but the details were too vivid to ignore. The Hills decided to undergo hypnosis to cover more of what had happened during those last hours. Under hypnosis, Barney's recounting was harrowing. He described the beings in detail, small, with large slanted eyes, dressed almost like Nazis with their uniforms, hats and scarves. For Barney, the experience had been deeply traumatic, and it began to take a toll on him. He, who'd been sober for years, started drinking again. He suffered from anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, and even strange genital issues that required multiple surgeries. Was this the psychological aftermath of the abduction, or was it the physical evidence of something more sinister? Betty, on the other hand, seemed to view the experience as almost an adventure, a strange brush with the unknown. The couple's starkly different reactions were apparent in the hypnosis sessions, Barney's terror contrasting with Betty's curiosity. As the story of their abduction emerged, the media caught wind. Newspapers, books, lectures, they all turned Betty and Barney Hill into reluctant celebrities. But the fame didn't bring peace. Barney continued to struggle, and just 7 years after that night, he died from a cerebral hemorrhage at only 48 years old. Betty, however, continued sharing their story, embracing her newfound role as a voice for those who had experienced the unexplained, until she passed away in 1994. One of the most notable aspects of Betty Hill's story was her recollection of the star map, During hypnosis, Betty drew a map of several stars that she claimed she had been shown aboard the craft. Later, an amateur astronomer named Marjorie Fish analysed the map and proposed that it bore a resemblance to the Zeta Reticuli star system. This led to the abduction sometimes being called the Zeta Reticuli incident. While many UFO enthusiasts considered the Hill story to be credible evidence of extraterrestrial contact, skeptics have offered other explanations. Skeptics suggest that the Hills could have been influenced by cultural and psychological factors. For instance, the stress of being an interracial couple in the early 1960s may have contributed to their emotional state, and the vivid dreams Betty had could have influenced their memories, which may have then been reinforced through hypnosis. Some psychologists have argued that their story is a case of confabulation, where false memories are unintentionally created. Critics have also pointed out that Barney's description of the aliens bore similarities to images from a television program about extraterrestrials which aired shortly before their abduction. The hypnosis sessions may have helped the Hills fill in gaps in their memory with details derived from dreams, anxieties, or popular media. So what really happened that night in 1961? Was it an extraordinary encounter with beings from beyond the stars, or the manifestation of something deeper in the human psyche? Betty and Barney Hill's story became the blueprint for countless abduction tales that would follow, an enduring mystery that still haunts the skies of New Hampshire, USA. Hopping over now to the other side of the planet, and this is Russia, 1997. Meet Kurzan Ilyumzinov, whose life story reads like a mix of business, politics, and an alien abduction. Kurzan was a successful businessman, chess enthusiast, and politician from Russia. From 1995 to 2018, Kurzan was the president of FIDE, the International Chess Federation, and he also led the Republic of Kalmykia, a region in southern Russia, from 1993 to 2010. Kurzan is an interesting character, to say the least. He is fluent in 4 languages: Russian, English, Japanese, and Khmer, and even served a couple of years in the Soviet army. After the USSR collapsed, Kurzan made his fortune in the automotive industry and transitioned into politics soon after, leading his home region for nearly 2 decades. But here's where things get weird. In September 1997, Kurzan made a claim that set him apart from most politicians. He said that one evening he was abducted by aliens. According to Kurzan, he was in his Moscow apartment when he was suddenly taken aboard a spaceship, spending a whole day in space with extraterrestrial beings. He described these beings as wearing yellow spacesuits, and at one point they even gave him a suit of his own to help him breathe more easily. This suit had a dial on the chest to control his oxygen supply, and he went on to describe the ship as enormous, and he mentioned that they made a stop on another planet to pick up some equipment. Communication with these beings, he says, was done telepathically. When he asked why they hadn't revealed themselves to the broader public, they replied that humanity simply wasn't ready yet. Despite the backlash and skepticism that followed, Kurzan remained open about his experience. He faced political criticism, with some considering him a bit eccentric. During his time in office, he became known for some rather unconventional policies, like giving every shepherd in Kalmykia a free mobile phone and focusing a lot on building religious structures. He even claimed to have an ability to make people bend to his will, which didn't exactly help with the public perception of his eccentricity. After his supposed abduction, Kurzan said that only an hour had passed in real time, though he felt he'd been away for much longer. His staff apparently looked for him during that hour, though there's no record of anybody seeing anything unusual. And if that wasn't enough, Kurzan also claimed that chess, the game he loves, was actually introduced to Earth by these aliens. It's no surprise that not everyone believed Kursan's story. One Russian parliament member, Andrei Lebedev, was especially vocal about it. He even suggested that Kursel might have disclosed sensitive information to the aliens, potentially putting national security at risk. Others simply thought he was making things up, or that he was delusional. Yet, despite the doubts and criticisms, Kursan stuck to his story. He said he received letters and calls from people all over the world, thanking him for having the courage to talk about his experience. And remarkably, this didn't end his political career. He continued as president of Kalmykia for several more years, even after going public with the story. So what do we make of Kursan's tale? Was he genuinely abducted by aliens? Or was it just a wild story? There's no solid evidence, no corroboration from his staff, and no tangible proof. But he never backed down from his account. Regardless of whether you believe it or not, it's an interesting reminder that stories of alien encounters aren't limited to ordinary people. Sometimes they come from high-profile leaders, people who seem to have little to gain from sharing such extraordinary claims. Maybe in a way, that's what makes this story so intriguing. Whether true or not, this adds an unexpected chapter to the history of chess, politics, and the search for extraterrestrial life. After a trip around the globe and into space, I'm going to go back to where this episode began, the UK, and this time Aveley in Essex. So it was a quiet evening in October 1974 when a family had a chilling encounter. It was late, just before 10 p.m. John and Elaine, along with their 3 children, Kevin, Karen and Stuart, were on their way home after visiting a nearby relative. It's a normal night, nothing out of the ordinary. They've got about a 9-mile drive ahead of them, just enough time for John to make it back for a TV programme that he didn't want to miss. As the car quietly hummed along, 7-year-old Kevin, the only child still awake, notices something strange. A blue, oval light floating near their car. At first, it seems to be following them. Then, out of nowhere, it shoots ahead and disappears into the night. Kevin is confused but keeps quiet. Then things get even stranger. A thick, green fog rolls in, swallowing the car. The radio suddenly starts smoking, and all sound inside the car is gone. Total silence. Just as quickly as it appeared, the fog lifts, and everything seems to go back to normal. They continue their journey and eventually arrive home. But something's off. It's now 1 a.m. How had hours slipped by without anybody noticing? John stays in the car, fiddling with the radio, while Elaine takes the kids to bed. Exhausted, they push the incident out of their minds. Little do they know, this night would change their lives forever. Over the next few months, the family begins to notice strange changes in their behaviour. They become repulsed by the smell of meat, and they all adopt a vegetarian lifestyle. John, a long-time heavy smoker, suddenly quits cold turkey, something he had never managed to do before. However, things take a darker turn when John suffers a mental breakdown, forcing him to leave work. And there's Kevin, who had always struggled with reading, who's now excelling in school. These are no small changes, and the family starts to wonder if they're connected to that strange night. Then, there are the unexplainable disturbances around their home. Odd buzzing and clicking sounds, objects vanishing without a trace, and the phone line making eerie clunking noises. And the most unsettling? One of the children reported seeing a man dressed as a clown standing by his bed. Every parent's worst nightmare. By 1977, the family had had enough. They wanted answers. That's when they reached out to UFO researchers Andy Collins and Barry King. What the investigators uncovered was even more disturbing than the family had imagined. Through hypnosis, it was revealed that the family's car had been lifted into a spacecraft by a beam of light. Inside, they were examined by strange bird-like creatures about 4 feet tall. These beings chirped as they worked, while taller figures, possibly in charge, oversaw the operation. These taller entities wore face coverings that looked like balaclavas and donned one-piece spacesuits. John recalled, under hypnosis, that these beings had pink eyes and communicated telepathically. They scanned his body with what he described as a wand-like device and told him something unsettling, that they weren't just visitors. They'd been here all along. And when he asked where they were from, the answer was even more cryptic, telling him, "There's no need for you to know because we're not going back." John and Annie Lane were later shown a map of sorts, though neither of them could decipher it. These memories, once unlocked, left the family shaken to the core. Over time, John and Elaine's relationship deteriorated, and they eventually separated. But John remained deeply haunted by the events of that night. He has said repeatedly that he would like to explore UFO research further, but every time he tries, strange occurrences start happening again, as if something is trying to stop him. Now, it wasn't just the family's word that supported their story. The investigators, Collins and King, found the family to be warm, intelligent, and most importantly, credible. John was described as articulate and creative, while Elaine, quieter but no less credible, had been an accountant before becoming a full-time mother. Andy Collins himself had a bizarre experience while staying overnight at the family's home. He recalled loud banging coming from the kitchen in the middle of the night. Terrified, he stayed under the blankets, lying on the family couch. Soon after, a strange sensation spread from his feet up to his entire body, filling him first with fear and then with an overwhelming sense of peace. Whatever had visited the family that night in 1974, it seemed, was still around. In 1978 review, published in Flying Saucer Review, Collins wrote, "Never before have we been able to present a fully documented account of an abduction, a car teleportation, and an important contact case all rolled into one in Great Britain." He even went so far as to call it the most important British UFO case ever recorded. What's even more interesting is that, through their research, the family revealed that they had experienced UFO sightings even before that night in October 1974. It begs the question, was this a one-off event, or had they been chosen, marked for contact long before? The Aveley case remains one of the most significant and talked about UFO abduction cases in the UK. It checks all the boxes: credible witnesses, unexplained events, and lasting effects on those involved. So what do you think? Could his family have been encountered beings from another world? Or is there another explanation hidden just out of reach? And perhaps the biggest question of all, if they're here, how long have they been watching us for? I hope you enjoyed that part 1 of our alien abductions special. Hopefully there's some new cases there you've not heard of before. Obviously betting Barney Hill, everybody knows. So yeah, let me know if any of that was new to you and what you think about these accounts. Listen out for the next episode coming out in just a few days, where we will talk about another number of alien abduction cases. Thank you for listening, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Pursuit of the Paranormal with Ash Ellis. Title music created by Steve Yarwood and Ambiinfinity. If you like the show, please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, X, and Instagram. And if you really like the show, please rate and review the show wherever you are listening. It really does help. See you next time, and until then, stay weird.